It's go time. Ladies and gentlemen, for the 8th time in just 2 years, and I think I just made that up, Micah Dank is back on the air. Micah Dank is a prolific author of esoteric information, also the host of Micah Dank Into the Rabbit Hole series on Facebook, a group where you can talk to Micah directly and get signed copies of his book. And his new website, which is not actually that new, but there were some problems with the host, is now up. And I am blown away by the graphics here. Absolutely compelling. Check out Micah Dank's website. And I said he was a prolific author, and I'm not making this shit up. Take a look. Micah Dank, Beneath the Veil series, The Sacred Stones, The Secret Weapon, Pangea's Pandemic, The Hidden Archives, and maybe soon to be more. We didn't talk about that. Welcome to the show, Micah.
Hey, Diamond. How's it going, man? It's good to be back.
Yeah, always good to be back. We were just talking about how well viewed our last interview was. 8,000 people watched it in just the last month. So the books are selling good, apparently, right? And you have a great response from your fans.
Yeah, it's been incredibly positive. You would think that because how controversial this shit is, that I'd get a couple lunatics, which I randomly do, but nowhere near as many people has said that like my stuff has been like life-changing and just changed the way they see things, and it's just opened their mind and their mind blown and all this kind of stuff. So it's been really positive.
Awesome. And we love supporting your work. And we've invited you to the next LeakCon, which is coming up. We're not going to give any dates. So Micah Dank is going to be at LeakCon Live. That's a promise he made to us, and I hope we can make that happen. Now, tonight we're going to talk about more awesome esoteric stuff because that's why people tune in. And the topic we're going to discuss tonight, Micah, is in fact what some people call the hidden gospels or the lost gospels. And now, and miraculously, some of these have just like shown up in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they're hiding in plain sight. And we're talking about the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Philip and Judas, and one other name that I can't pronounce. So do you want to give us a little synopsis on some of these lost gospels? I'd like to know, why were they kept out of the King James Bible? And then what are we going to talk about tonight?
So basically, we're going to talk about the astrotheology. I'm going to go through the 12 signs as I always do. And then we're going to talk about the astrotheology that's hidden in these gospels. Now, my contention, for example, with the Book of Enoch is that the Book of Enoch was left out, even though it's still in the Ethiopian Bible. It was left out of our King James Bible because it openly talks about astrology and summonings and things of that nature. Whereas in the other gospels that were left in the Bible, it was all encoded. Okay. And that's how I feel is the same thing about like the Gospel of Philip, Mary Magdalene, and Judas. The Gospel of Judas, for example, is interesting because in the Gospel of Judas, it tells the story from Judas's point of view that he was Jesus's favorite disciple and that he asked him to betray him. Okay. When I go through my 12 signs, you know that Scorpio is the betrayer, and Judas represents Scorpio because he's the betrayer. And when we talk about it, he basically Jesus asks him to betray him, so it kind of, and it tells Judas that he'll be in the Most High with him when he dies.
Wow.
So basically that's, it was considered heretic. So they banned it. They got rid of it. It's hard to find nowadays. But even though that fucking Jeff Bezos, Amazon is still around, you could still get copies of the Gospel of Judas. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene is different too, because it talks about the disciples, and they talk about how jealous they are. They think that Jesus loves Mary Magdalene more than them, and it's talking about it. It's interesting, but at the end of the day, these are all just astrology books. At the end of the day, this is it. Every time I come on, I break down a new text and tell you how it's just astrology, and it's no different here.
Okay, so let's take the Book of Judas. You just told us a little bit about that. So when Jesus is written about, Judas is his favorite disciple, and he asks him to betray him. And we know that that has to do with Scorpio
Right.
astrologically. I mean, literally, does that mean like Jesus
Right.
loved the season of Scorpio because that's when the cannabis was harvested? And he literally said that Judas and him was going to get so high in September. I mean, what is the translation?
Well, it's different. I mean, there are more metaphors that are hidden. There's not really a story that's told with the astrotheology. It's more just hidden star gospel. For example, if you know anything about uh, the citer, Jesus calls him Peter. Well, why Simon? That's not even a nickname. That has nothing to do with it. Well, Peter was a fisherman. Simon was a fisherman. Okay, and fish is Pisces, and the ruling planet of Pisces is actually Jupiter or Jupiter. So there's all these little innuendos and anagrams and sort of things that they throw in there in order for you to, clues in order to let you know. It doesn't really tell a story. It just tells you, about the stars and how big they are and where their positions are in location with others. That's basically the point of it.
So really, phonetically, like Jupiter could mean Jew-Peter, and they're just using this phonetic dance,
Exactly.
this phonetic dance to confuse us, or to actually, in your opinion, encode the astrotheology.
Well, I would ask, why would you call someone whose name's Simon Peter? And Simon being the fisherman, that's Pisces, and the ruling planet of Pisces is Jupiter, Jew-Peter. To me, that makes more sense than, oh, let's just call you Peter.
Yeah. So
But that's just me,
right. And the levels are amazing. So give us some revelations about Mary Magdalene, Philip, and Judas. And Thomas. Because
Okay.
I have up. Well, let's
All
talk
right.
about
So
Thomas first, because I actually have the remnants of the Dead Sea Scroll of the Gospel of Thomas up on the screen, and it looks like it's written in Greek.
right, it was. It was, because you got to remember, ancient Greek was a rivaling language with ancient Hebrew or Phoenician Canaanite, as it was originally known, and more so Aramaic too. The Aramaic was a big deal back then too. But yeah, a lot of these come from Greek too. It's very interesting when you think about that, and they have their influences in Greek too. But let me go through the 12 signs real quick so that when I break this down, it makes sense for people who've never heard me talk.
Okay.
Let's do that first.
Do it.
Okay. So the first sign I talk about is Aquarius, which is, and if you want to pull up pictures for people to see, if you want to just type in Aquarius and then just pull up a picture so people can see it, so they can know what I'm talking about during the pictures. So Aquarius is the man holding a water pitcher, okay? And he's pouring the water out, okay? So whenever you hear the words man or son of man or boy or, let's say, baptism, because pouring water out of a water pitcher onto a child's head is how you baptize them, or running water or rivers or fountain, for example, that's talking about Aquarius. Those are the key words. Then Pisces is the sign of the two fish in the water. Okay. Then Aries is the ram. And in Aries, you have March 21st, which is the spring equinox. It's a 12-hour day. It's a 12-hour night. It's also the Passover. Okay. So the Jews celebrate the Passover when God passed over Egypt, brought judgment to the firstborn sons, and basically killed them all in order to get, it was the 10th plague, in order to get to have Moses and the Jews escape from Egypt, and then Exodus comes. In astrotheology, the Passover is literally the passing over of the sun over the equator, okay? And that all happens in Aries. In Christianity, the passing over is changed, and it becomes the resurrection of God's son as it comes back over the equator, okay? So the sun, S-U-N, not S-O-N, okay? Then Taurus is the bull. And when you look in the sky and you see Taurus during the season, you know that you need to put the plow on the bull in the ancient times so that you can plant, and so that you can plant the seeds so you can harvest in Virgo and Libra. Then Gemini are the twins. It's the story of Castor and Pollux Troy, whose sister was Helen of Troy. It's the story of Achilles. There's not too many mentions of twins. There are mentions of twins in the Bible. Like Jesus rides into town on twin donkeys, for example. But they're usually, when they talk about brothers, they're talking about Gemini. Then Cancer is the crab, and it's the sideways moving creature. So what happens is the sun rises a degree on its axis starting on December 25th. Then the next day it rises another. The next day it rises another. It continues to rise a degree. Days get longer until it hits June 21st, which is the longest day of the year. That's the summer solstice. Then for 3 consecutive days after that, the sun literally walks sideways, just like the crab, and it just stays at that height. Then on June 25th, it lowers a degree, and then it continues to lower a degree every single day until it hits December 21st. December 21st is the day that the sun dies, because the sun doesn't rise above the horizon anymore. So the ancients used to say that God's sun was dead. And then just like it walked sideways for 3 days in June, it walked sideways for 3 days in December too. So God's sun was dead for 3 days. That's where that comes from. Then Leo is the king. He's the lion. He's the king of the jungle. The ruling planet of Leo is actually the sun. Okay, so whenever they're talking about a lion or a cub or a lioness, or they're talking about the kingdom of heaven being on earth, they're talking about the sun in its rightful home, which is in Leo, because the sun is the ruling planet of Leo. Then Virgo is the woman holding the wheat stalk, okay? So remember before I said you plant in Taurus? Well, you plant in Taurus, and then the virgins would cultivate the wheat in Virgo in order to make the bread for the year. So anytime you hear the word woman or virgin or young woman or bread or seed or barley or wheat or chaff or things of that nature, they're talking about Virgo. Then Libra is the justice. It's the man with the scales. It's the justice, it's the scales, it's the balance. Jesus is called the just one. The reason it's the justice is because it judges God's sun as it passes over the fall equinox. It begins its descent into winter, into cold, into death. So it's celebrated when it goes over the equator in Aries, and then it's basically mourned when it drops below the equator in Libra. Okay, so basically the sun is judged in Libra. Libra is also, so anytime you hear the words law or judge or judgment or divorce, tax, marriage, things that have to do with law or contracts, for example, law-related stuff, you're talking about Libra. Libra is also wine and olive season. Okay, so whenever they're talking about the oil and the wine, they're talking about Libra. Whenever they're talking about the vineyards, the parable of the true vine, for example, they're talking about Libra. Then Scorpio is we went over this already. Scorpio is the betrayer. And the reason Scorpio is the betrayer, for people who don't know, is because back in the ancient days, when a scorpion would bite you, it would leave an imprint in your skin that looked like a pair of lips. And it's where the mafia gets the phrase, the kiss of death, from. It's because you'd pull the scorpion off. It looked like it kissed you, but it's full of poison. So it was a metaphorical betrayal. Okay, and that's why Jesus was betrayed by Judas with a kiss. He could have stoned him. He could have thrown a rock at him. He could have pointed him out. He could have hugged him. He betrayed him with a kiss because it's a metaphor. Okay, so the sun is judged in Libra, and it's betrayed in Scorpio. Then finally in Sagittarius, this is the guy on the horse with the bow and arrow. The bow and the arrow shoot the sun to inflict further punishment on the sun, killing the sun. In the Bible, it's translated as a spear. There's a spear of destiny that checks to make sure Jesus is dead. And then we went over this. In Sagittarius, you have December 21st, which is the day of death. It's when the sun doesn't rise on its axis anymore. And then Capricorn is the goat, because you start the new year climbing the zodiac wheel. The sun climbs the zodiac wheel a degree a day, metaphorically, and the goat climbs the mountain. Okay? Now, real quick, if I just wanted to go into this, just names for Jesus, okay? When Jesus being the Son, S-U-N of God, when the sun is in Capricorn, the goat, he's called the scapegoat of Israel. When the sun is Aquarius, the sign of the man that I mentioned, he's known as the Son of Man. When the sun is in Pisces, or when Jesus is in Pisces, he's known as the fisherman of men. And it's also why he could feed the masses with 2 fish. When Jesus is in Aries, he's known as the Lamb of God. Makes sense. When Jesus is in Leo, he's known as the Lion of Judah. The lady holding the stalk of wheat, Virgo, he's born of a virgin, just like all the other gods are, and he's called the bread of life. Libra is the scales of justice. He's known as the just one. See, there's a name for him that has to do with celestial heavens. Okay, but that's basically the 12 signs. So I can jump into these gospels unless you got a question, Diamond.
Well, we're looking at a picture, an ancient picture probably a mural on the Sistine Chapel or somewhere. I didn't research it. But what it shows is a picture of Jesus, and it's a hand of God painting, probably 500 years old. And behind Jesus is what appears to be a wheel of stars. And where Jesus is reaching out and grabbing the hand of God is exactly at 9 o'clock on a clock. And if you go over to your website, that shows
Right.
the astrology, it's the transition almost into what's before Aquarius in summer. It's the
Right before Aquarius is
Capricorn, and
Wait, in summer Aquarius is Capricorn. Yeah.
right before Capricorn is the June 21st summer solstice, and that's where his hand is reaching out to that 3 days. So that Jesus's hand is reaching out on that 3 days in summer to grab the hand of God. Does that make sense to you?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, what I just told you about the sun and the climbing a degree a day, then walking sideways for 3, then dropping a degree a day, then walking sideways for 3. This is science. This is what it does. Okay, this was observable naked to the eyes of the ancients. They were able to follow this. Okay, so this is what happens. And Capricorn, okay, the reason it would be right next to it is because Cancer is Capricorn's opposing sign. Okay. And in Cancer, you have June 21st. You have the summer solstice. So that's why it would be that.
Yeah. It's amazing. And this was painted in the 1500s or the 1600s. And who are the people that were alive then, hundreds of generations ago that knew this information? I mean, what you're about to tell us about the hidden gospels, they already knew.
Yeah, they did. Before 325 AD. Before 325 AD, the Council of Nicaea, where Constantine united everything under literal Christianity, believing it word for word. Before then, Christians were known as Helionostics, and Helios in Greek means sun, and Gnosis means to know. They were sun worshippers, and they all knew this. In fact, Constantine had a nephew named Julian the Apostate, okay? And Julian the Apostate, his works have survived, okay? And if you look at his works, he tried to bring everyone back to sun worship after his uncle died, okay? And he ended up getting an arrow in his back in battle that killed him for it. But the ancients knew this. Da Vinci knew this when he painted the Last Supper.
Yeah.
You can see Libra. Can you see me?
Yes.
Can you see me?
Absolutely.
Libra is like this in the Last Supper. There's a guy holding his hands down like this, like the scales. Okay. Then Leo is pointing. If you look at the woman, that's Virgo, and he's pointing to her Adam's apple, showing that it's not there. There's hidden codes in there from Da Vinci. Da Vinci knew this. Da Vinci knew all this shit. Everybody knew all this shit. It seems like the further we get away from time, or the further along we get, people are just reverting to this. Like, no one would be taking this book seriously. Nobody would take the Bible seriously. And the ones that wrote it would probably lose their minds if they knew people were worshiping it as word.
Oh, but we're talking about hundreds of millions of people that are worshiping it as word. And even if let's say we were to take all of these hundreds of millions of people, we'll put them in a stadium, and you and I explain to them that there are at least a half a dozen other figures that are not Jesus that tell the same story. We lay out all of the historical context. We lay out all of the so-called medieval folklore, and they still would believe what the guy in their church is telling them.
Absolutely. For example, you know how the priest has how the Pope has a mitre? His hat's called a mitre. Yeah. The mitre comes his hat. It's called a mitre. It's a white and gold hat. It's called a mitre. That comes from Mithraism. Mithraism was a fish god. Okay, Dagon, the fish god worship. That has to do with Pisces because that was the age of Pisces. In fact, if you take the Pope's mitre and you turn it to its side, it looks like a fish head. Yeah, you could Google pictures of. You could just Google mitre fish head. It's a fish head. It's all got. all these religions all tell the same story because it's the exact same story of the sun. That science doesn't change.
No, and in fact, astrology, in my opinion, in our channel's opinion, and the theory that we have, is the oldest science, and it is actually the only science that's been able to get through each of these catastrophes. Each advanced civilization that gets destroyed, somehow we're able to transition this information across the borders. We just had a huge mass extinction 11, 12,000 years ago, and somehow society was able to pass this information from the Atlantis culture to our modern society. But the elites bastardize it and use it as a control mechanism. They don't use it to teach morality.
Well, that's basically what my book series is about.
Go ahead.
No, it's basically what my book series is about. I talk about yes, it's written fictionally, but it talks about how the elites are basically using astrotheology and astrology against normal people.
Well, do you want to dive in a little deeper and then we'll finish up? Can you give us a little bit of the Micah Dank theory?
All right. So basically, let's see here. We got in the Egyptian, whatchamacallit, in the Egyptian times, you had they worshipped the bull. It was the age of Taurus. They used to see hieroglyphs with the bull, with the horns like this and the sun between their head. They were telling you they worshipped the bull in Taurus. When Moses goes to the top of the mountain, to get the 10 Commandments, he comes down, he sees them worshiping a golden calf. Now, that's one of two things, okay? Remember, the Jews are the people of Aries, okay? That's the ram. That's why the Jews blow the ram's horn on the high holidays, okay? It's because it's ancient star worship, okay? Otherwise, why were they blowing a ram's horn? They're the people of Aries. So Moses comes down. He sees them worshiping a golden calf. Now, one of two things is possible. Either they left Egypt, hurried across the sea with whatever they had on their backs, but brought a whole bunch of gold with them. Okay, found welding equipment at the base of a mountain and pulled all their gold and built a giant statue. Or in the middle of the desert, by the way. Or they're talking about the gold is the sun and the calf is Taurus. They were worshiping the sun in Taurus. That was not their time period anymore. They're the people of Aries. That's why Moses broke the law, because he was pissed at them. It's all a metaphor. He was pissed at them for worshiping the wrong time period. Okay? They're the Aries people. That's why they have the lamb's horn.
Micah, if I could just interject, there's actually been archaeological studies in the last few years that have found ancient smelting sites 2,000 years old, 3,000 years old potentially, even 4,000 years old, in these biblical regions up on the top of a mesa near Mount Ararat, where they could have literally been smelting. A lot of people think they were making ormus. These are Egyptians. They're making ormus, which is a gold substance that people ate, which is it's in the Bible, and it's literally the substance that the Jews ate falling from the sky, maybe. It's controversial. But it could also be a smelting area where they were actually making golden calves that are literally written about. Because there's many instances of these golden statues that are, they're heretical because they're false idols. But I think there were actually gold calves, don't you?
These are people. If you're taking this literally, these are people that wandered in the desert for 40 years. Do you think these Jews that had to flee their homes in Egypt in order to leave with Moses all brought a shit ton of gold? I mean, the way they describe it in the Bible, this was a huge golden calf.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know how much gold you would need? Okay. Do you have any idea how much gold you would need to build such a statue?
Oh, yeah.
It
would be
and not to mention that too,
a portion of all the gold known on the world at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I read an article somewhere that said that if you took all the gold that's ever been known in the world and you flatten it to about an inch thick, okay, and you lined the streets of Manhattan with it, it would only go about 2 blocks.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that much. There's not that much gold. It's like 90 feet high by 90 feet wide. That's it, in a square. It literally would fill like a small stadium. That's it.
Hmm.
There's not much gold ever found on Earth. And when we start thinking about like
Right.
Anunnaki mining gold and saving their planet, all that shit becomes a complete fantasy and a fairy tale. And now we're talking about the Bible and golden calves, and it sounds very similar. A fairy tale. Now, why would they be telling fairy
Right.
tales unless it was ancient knowledge or the mystery schools? We're literally unveiling to the general
Hmm.
public the actual information that is tens of thousands of years old about the mystery schools in Egypt and the lost knowledge from ancient high societies that have been destroyed on our planet.
Exactly. Exactly. So back to your original question, okay? So the Jews are the people of Aries. So then eventually the time of Aries fades and the Jewish people start to fade. Their numbers decrease, they lower. And then you have Pisces, the two fish. Jesus feeds the masses with two fish. He's known as the fisherman of men, you know? Um, the Vesica Pisces, okay, is the center. This is the center of the Vesica Pisces is your Jesus fish. Okay, its denominator of the Vesica Pisces denominator is 153. 153 is the amount of fish that the disciples caught when Jesus resurrected and walked along the beach, and he told them to throw the net to the other side. Okay, so it's all encoded. It's all encoded in there. Okay, and then basically what happens is the Christian time period ended because we're in the age of Aquarius now. So within 1,000 years, you're going to see the Christians are going to start to fade. They have to because their time is no longer used. The elites run this. Okay, and we're in the age of Aquarius right now. Okay, that's the man with the water pitcher. It's the man. So basically, it's going to be we're in the golden age. So we're gonna grow our knowledge as a collective group. It's going to be a very good thing, but there's also going to be a transhumanist movement that's going to be against it.
So real quick, Micah, before we close up here, you're into the rabbit hole series. Last time we talked may be extended. Are you going to be doing more books, or is there a different project on the horizon?
So there's a sixth book coming out September. It's going to be September 15th to the 30th. My publisher, it depends on when I get this thing back from editing. But basically, it's going to be September 15th or the 30th, and that goes deep into some stuff. Basically, the series is I'm going to write a seventh book for the series, and I'm going to write a kids astrology book too. And
Awesome.
then I don't know what I'm going to do after that. I'm just going to probably do speaking tours or this, that, and the other thing.
All right, so we got you scheduled for LeeCon. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. What will we be talking about next time? Let's delve into that.
Maybe let's go into these gospels that we didn't get a chance to go into.
Okay, because I'm really interested in the Melchizedek, one of the earliest gospels, and let's focus on that for the folks out there listening.
You want me to jump into it real quick?
Yeah, let's give us a real quick preview.
Sure. Hold on a sec. Let me find it.
Pulling up the data.
Here we go. So Melchizedek is an apocalyptic gospel originally written in Greek, telling of the visions received from celestial beings by Melchizedek. It contains prophecies concerning the death, ministry, and resurrection of Jesus and the heretics who will deny him. Now, you got to understand is that these gospels, these Gnostic gospels that I'm going to talk about, they don't have like verses and sections. I can't be like Isaiah 45:7. So I just have to read the passage because they're not broken down in sections like that. So in Melchizedek, it says, I speak about Jesus, Son of God, who came from the eon that speaks about all eons and their nature, so I may be fit to adorn the robe of love and righteousness. And they're talking about the eon, okay, the age. That's what they used to be. The signs, okay, the zodiac signs are known as houses. They're known as eons, okay. They're known as mansions.
Yes.
There's different words for them. So basically, the age of Pisces was when this was written. So that's when who came from the eon that speaks about all eons in their nature. So that's talking about Pisces. Then it says, but it isn't oxen you should offer for sins of infidelity, nescience, and evil deeds, for they don't reach the Father at all. But firm faith is certain for those baptized in the waters that lie above. So in the age of Taurus, you would sacrifice an ox or a bull to God. Okay, this is the thing. In the ancient times, okay, in the ancient times of the Old Testament, they used to have to do animal sacrifices in order to get right with God. The idea of the New Testament is that, you know, when Jesus, the Son of God, S-O-N, of God, dies on the cross, that was the sacrifice. You don't need to sacrifice animals anymore. That was the sacrifice for all sacrifices. So that passage I just read you, in the age of Taurus, you would sacrifice an ox or a bull to the god. They are in the age of Pisces now, which is the water that lies above. It's the fish in the water. So when they say, but firm faith is certain for those baptized in the waters that lie above. Okay, it's simple that. You're in water. You have Aquarius, that's a man with a water pitcher, and you have Pisces, that's the water. Okay? His grace is boundless. He has great compassion, sending his angels of light from the eons to unveil the way to end ignorance and to lead us all from death to eternal life. I mean, that's all they really have in there for astrotheology, but that's basically, you know, if you want me to go, I can keep going. I can give you a different gospel.
No, let's save it for the next podcast. And that way we have something to look forward to. Micah Dank, it's always a pleasure to have you on.
That sounds good.
A prolific author. Check out Micah
Thanks,
Dank, the real Mr. Dank on Twitter. All his books are on Amazon. His website is back up and functioning, micahdank.com. All the links will be below. Always a pleasure to have you on the show, Micah, and we'll talk to you soon. And that's a boom. Knowledge.
Thanks, Diamond.
Be safe. We love you.